Okay, so today we will be looking at a new picture book called The Curiosities. It was written and illustrated by Zaina Fralin and Phil Lesney. This text has some poetic aspects to it, as well as being accompanied by colourful illustrations which relate to the text displayed. So, this picture book is about a boy called Miro who is surrounded by entities called curiosities. Throughout this story, we see how Miro embraces his differences and moves past the darkness brought upon him through his curiosities. Now, just to give you a brief feel for the text, I'll read some select pages from partway through. But sometimes, the curiosities were so loud and strange that people couldn't help but stare. The curiosities trilled and gurgled, pulling at Miro's arms and flapping at his legs, whispering in his ear so that all about him disappeared into a buzz of cold noise and confusion. Sometimes, the curiosities were so bright and brilliant that everyone turned away. Then no matter what he did, Miro was invisible. One evening, as the sun tiptoed across the very tops of the trees, something itched at the curiosities, a wild, untamed storm, furious and strong. The curiosities gathered, cheering and clapping and stomping and yowling. Miro demanded quiet. He pleaded for peace, but the curiosities would not be tamed. The Curiosities is a diverse text, drawing heavily from Filipino folklore and history, depicting the curiosities as traditional ghouls and monsters called aswang, as well as featuring a neurodiverse child who has Tourette syndrome. These main ideas throughout the text were influenced heavily by the author and illustrator's own perspectives and connections to the previously mentioned concepts, one having a child diagnosed with Tourette syndrome and the other coming from a Filipino background. The Curiosities is told in the form of a typical narrative structure, possessing an evident orientation, complication, resolution, and coda. This makes the text accessible to all students as it is a fundamental text type. Additionally, illustrations heavily support the written text as displayed in the pages read previously. The illustrators use a variety of visual techniques such as color, tone, and gaze. These provide an additional way for students to engage with the text, potentially increasing their comprehension. As mentioned prior, The Curiosities follows the journey of a young Filipino boy named Miro. Miro has no dialogue within the story, with much of his emotions and feelings towards the curiosities, as well as his own difference, being communicated to the audience through visual techniques within the illustrations. Miro's character is observed to be navigating his own experiences with the curiosities and more broadly his place within the village as a whole. He comes to the conclusion near the end of the text that connecting with others, such as the village elder, help him to overcome the darkness he occasionally encounters with his curiosities. The setting of the curiosities is a fundamental aspect of the text, dictating the form and nature of the curiosities as they take the shape of the traditional folkloric entities called aswang, as previously mentioned. The setting revolves around Miro's immediate surroundings, being the natural Filipino landscape as well as his village. In many instances throughout the text, Miro's own curiosities are what take him to these wild places where they can interact with one another alone. This image, taken from the text, depicts Miro's loss of control over his curiosities, which have overwhelmed him in such a way, causing him to break down. This breaking is figuratively stated within the text through, "He felt the ground vanish beneath him, and the sounds of the earth fade, until all around him was deep silence." The illustrator Lesney conveys this moment through the strong and contrasting use of color. The deep red that covers the entire page is a color which highly contrasts what was previously seen throughout the text, featuring predominantly blue and green tones, as Miro explores and moves through his environment. Further, the colorization of Miro in this moment being almost entirely black, except for some parts of his body being lit by the deep red, further signifies this turn towards darkness that the character is experiencing. This dramatic shift in color scheme can also signal the climax of the complication stage within the narrative. Additionally, Miro's isolation within this image, being the sole participant, is significant, as it is another shocking and contrasting aspect. In every page within the text, Miro is not alone. He either is in the presence of other humans or surrounded by his curiosities. This decision to compose the visual with a sole participant further accentuates Miro's feelings of isolation. Furthermore, the body language displayed by Miro within this page, being a fetal position with the extensions on his clothes as well as his hair, give the impression that he is floating in a scared or vulnerable state. This, coupled with the deep red background and negative space, further supports the textual elements present on the page as well. Many of the descriptions for Mira's curiosities are significant and pleasing to read due to the vivid imagery they provide. For example, they shrieked and roared, they washed over Miro, loud and strange and bright and brilliant and prickly and tingly. This description includes many adjectives which signify Mira's feelings of being overwhelmed, which eventually lead to his breakdown previously explored. A lesson idea I have for a Stage 3 class to assist in teaching utilizing this text revolves around the building of descriptive vocabulary through using the descriptions of Mira's curiosities as an example. This activity would occur after the students have been exposed to the text, and in small groups, on small whiteboards, they are to collectively brainstorm alternative ways to describe Mira's curiosities. It would be important to note to the students that the curiosities are not described as holistically bad or malevolent, and they should take that into consideration when formulating their descriptions. Completing this activity in a group setting allows for differentiation to occur through heterogeneous grouping. An additional lesson idea specifically targeting the creative writing skills of Stage 3 students is for them to write a brief extension to the story. This extension is to be written during an episode where Mira's curiosities periodically return, a fact mentioned near the end of the text in the narrative's resolution. Through this activity, students can explore the possibilities for how Mira has progressed in dealing with his curiosities. This activity will encourage the students to use their comprehension and understanding of the text, its characters, and the nature of Mira's curiosities, while also fostering a level of autonomy through free individual writing. Finally, as an oral and oral activity, this learning experience will draw from aspects of dialogic classroom environments to build student engagement. Within this learning activity, students will be separated into heterogeneous groups and asked to discuss, make observations, and eventually present as a group an analysis of the visual elements and techniques used by the illustrator to further support the written text present on a particular page. Each group will be provided a different page to analyze. The extension of high-achieving students during the language study learning activity can take the form of asking questions which encourage the student to think deeper and more critically about the text, including, what could Mira's curiosities represent? And why do you think the author and illustrator chose to portray Mira's curiosities in the way that they did? To support students, as previously mentioned, the language study activity will be completed in heterogeneous grouping. This involves strategically grouping stronger students with weaker ones, which has been found to heavily benefit support students as they can seek help from their more capable peers. Furthermore, the dialogic nature of the activity also helps to support students with additional learning needs. For related texts, I aim to find one picture book that provided a similar visual experience due to its abstract illustrations and rich symbology, as well as a text that connected more with the Curiosities themes of community and belonging. Students can utilize The Red Tree by Sean Tan to explore another pictorial representation of very negative and real emotions and how holding hope can help to overcome these feelings. Furthermore, this text contains a wealth of rich illustrations and contains a variety of elements and symbology which would be suitable to analyze. Relating to the Curiosities, the Barnabas Project by the Fan Brothers explores similar themes of embracing one's own uniqueness and the significance of community for a sense of belonging. Additionally, elements such as characterization, which work in tandem with visual elements, also can assist in the development of visual literacy. In the Curiosities, Miro eventually discovers his support network of adults that progressively help him to manage the difficulties he faces due to his curiosities. This concept can also be applied within the PDHPE Key Learning area, where students first individually make a record of trusted adults within their own support network, and then collectively as a class discuss ideas surrounding how the support network can change over time, and also change depending on the problem or situation experienced.